So this being 11 a.m., I think we can start the maintenance and development meeting. If this is about, I think, who we expect to show, we can let other people in if in Focus Springfield sees anyone in the visitor box. So we are here today to discuss LED lighting and some speed bump issues. And I know this is of concern to all of us here in the city of Springfield. And especially it's been a focus of, I know Councilor Lederman has been a leader in this issue in LED lighting. So do we have Chris and anyone from your office or anyone from Eversource that wish to perhaps provide the council with an update on where we are, where we're at, and where we're going with respects to lighting?
Great. Councilor Carlin, can you hear me? This is Joe Mitchell with Eversource.
Could you say that again, sir?
It's Joe Mitchell with Eversource, Community Relations. How you doing, Councilor?
Hi, Joe. How are you?
Great. We'll start with introduction. In the meeting is myself, of course, and we have to my right is Eric Falcone, who's the manager of electric ops. Hiding just off camera is Vanessa Klein, your account executive, who's manages your street lights, and Jay Ferrero is with us. He's with the engineering department. I didn't know if perhaps maybe Eric, you want to start with like where we are, what percentage, what neighborhood we're in.
Sure. Yeah, and just for an overview for anybody that wasn't either present or doesn't recall our previous meeting. So in the city of Springfield, we have just over 14,000 lights that Eversource owns and maintains. And last year, we committed with the city to convert all of those lights to LED over a 5-year time period starting this year. So we did start this project as scheduled in January of this year. So currently, we're about 15% of the way through. On a yearly basis, we're looking to convert about 3,000 units. So we're at about 15% of that target. We've converted about 450 streetlights. We're starting in the Indian Orchard neighborhood. So anybody in that area should be noticing a lot of new LED luminaires in that area. And after that, we'll be moving probably into Pine Point.
Terrific. Councilor Lederman, if you have any points of discussion with that.
Sure. Thanks, Mr. Chairman, and thank you to the Eversource team for joining the meeting. Certainly the conversion to LED lighting technology is something we've been after for quite a few years, and we're glad to see that the administration and Eversource finally took heed and are moving forward with a version of the plan. I think there's two issues I wanted to address at this state in the conversion. The first being, when we had met last year, we had discussed getting some more information on the technical design that was being used. I know there had been some concerns raised by different groups to make sure that, when we did the conversion, we did it correctly with best practices in mind. So can you share a little bit about what efforts are being taken to ensure that, as the conversion takes place, the lights that are actually being installed are going to be the appropriate brightness and also be designed in such a way that they are effectively lighting and not causing any issues for pedestrians or drivers?
Sure. So the lights that we're using are industry standard variety. They're used in many other utilities, and they're used in other areas of Eversource outside of the Western Massachusetts area. They're a 3,000 degree Kelvin color temperature, as they kind of refer to it, which is sort of the agreed upon industry standard. I think some of the issues early on in the move to LED fixtures, they were using a a higher color temperature, which was causing some issues. This appears to be the standard that the industry is settling on, that 3,000 degree Kelvin temperature. So outside of that, as far as the lumens and the light output, what we're doing is, we're matching what's existing there. And if we're getting any feedback from citizens through the DPW, where Vanessa is handling those requests to change light output as needed.
And as this is all occurring, has there been, any auditing done as we're going along to evaluate, sort of what's on the books versus what is in the field? I know that there was some concern early on, because of the sort of historical nature of the way that our lighting system was installed kind of haphazardly over the years, that between knockdowns and lights that had become so old that they were just no longer functioning. Have we been tracking to make sure that, at the end of this, we're going to have a fully sort of a fully reconciled list to make sure that our future billing is in order?
Yeah, so that's happening, and we've got it broken out obviously from one large group into several smaller jobs, and each of those jobs, our technicians are taking notes as to the current condition, what's out there, the condition of the equipment itself, also the location, both the pole number location and the street number, verifying that, and they're reporting any abnormalities. So if we get out to a street and there's supposed to be 5 lights on that street on every other pole, they're verifying that is either true or not true, and any variations they find, they're documenting, and we're passing that information along to Jay's group, our engineering folks, who will make those adjustments in the system and send the adjustments to billing if needed. Otherwise, what they're doing is basically just correcting if things are not matching up. So if there's 5 lights on the street, or we in billing see that there's supposed to be 5 lights on the street, we're making sure there's 5 lights on that street.
And is there any assessment, as you're going street by street, of the lighting in that area? In other words, are we looking at making sure that, once we're done in a particular area, that the lighting is actually providing enough coverage?
That's probably out of the scope of the technicians that's performing the work to do. They're verifying that everything's in working order, and if there's any vegetation or other issues that may be impeding light being cast where it's supposed to, they're making those corrections to make sure that they're maximizing the amount of light that's out there as designed.
I think Councilor Letterman also, whereas DPW is kind of the keeper of the lights in the city, I imagine once we're done, we can certainly do an audit, if that's something that Mr. Signoli wants to do. And, I'll let him weigh in on it, but if that's something he wants to, I would imagine afterward, as opposed to in progress, doing piece by piece, perhaps afterward, that's something that the city wants to undertake. But I want to speak for Chris.
Yeah, I'd like to hear Chris's thoughts. I mean, we passed a resolution back in 2018 asking for an audit. I don't think one was ever done. I mean, my understanding was it was usually best practice to do an audit prior to undergoing your conversion, just so you could kind of, as you then went out and you were in the field, you could make any corrections. It sounds like that was not done. Correct me if I'm wrong, Chris, but what are one of the issues that I think have been raised historically by different, community members in this work has been a concern that not only was our technology outdated, but also that our infrastructure was just sort of lacking. So, Chris, what are your thoughts on how we're handling that going forward in the context of this conversion?
What we've been doing as far as the conversion, basically what Eversource is doing right now, they're doing a 1-to-1 conversion of what is out there. If there are additional lights that are needed, Joe's group, Vanessa, and other people contact me, ask me if it's appropriate to add a light to a particular location. Just did one this morning, as a matter of fact. So we're making determinations as to whether or not additional lighting is needed anywhere. We also get requests from residents with regard to, hey, an area might be dark. Now, I don't think what we're going to do at this point is overreact to a dark area until we get the LEDs in to make a determination whether that lighting is truly lacking or if it's just because we're getting to the end of a life cycle, a particular light that's out there that's not putting out the light that it should. So if we end up, and as I said this morning, actually just signed up for a new one, probably do one of those every week or two with Joe and Vanessa. So whenever there's a determination that we need to put a new light in, they contact me. 99% of the time we approve it and send it right back to them.
So there are some reports coming out of the field saying we think we need an additional light.
Right, it kind of comes from 3 different places. It'll either come from a resident, it will come from us, or it will come from them. And each one of them, if they want to add a light, or when I say they, if a light needs to be added, I get a contract, I have to sign the contract and return it to them.
Okay. I don't want to monopolize all the time, Mr. Chairman. I know Councilor Govan is here. I do have I have a few more questions, but I'll limit it at this time to this one because I know this has come up in quite a few of the neighborhoods, or at least in the neighborhoods that have these particular types of lights, and that is the decorative historic lights. I know especially in Forest Park, we've heard from folks that some of those have come down and been replaced with standard lighting. So where are we at with the decorative historic lights in downtown Forest Park, Maple High, Six Corners? I know that's a feature that residents have certainly enjoyed and advocated for in the past, especially in the historic districts. It's a unique piece to the city. So what's going on with those at this time?
Let me just, from my perspective, Counselor, what's been happening is in a lot of cases, these decorative lights do not exist anymore. They cannot be purchased, they cannot be procured. And so what's been happening is that we've been working with Eversource to, in a lot of cases, if they can be procured, and I'm going to use Sumner Avenue as an example. If that light can be procured, we're probably looking at anywhere between 8 months and a year to to get that light in. So in a lot of cases, what they've been doing is temporarily putting up a light. They just did that on Long Hill Street because the light out there was damaged. So they do not have these in the inventory. And in a lot of cases, especially like the Main Street lights that we have downtown, correct me if I'm wrong, Joe, they don't even exist anymore.
Yeah, I'm not sure, Chris, on which specific neighborhoods, but there are certain ones that, whether it be car versus pole or just age and the light failing, there are certain historic ones. Long Hill is one, and recently we talked about Elliott Street, that they don't make anymore, and it's not an LED, it's an incandescent or high-pressure sodium. They don't make them anymore, and as far as converting it, I know there's one email in front of you now that we have something similar that we can acquire and just looking for that. But so long story short is some of these older lights, there may not be an exact conversion in the LED world.
I think that what we've heard previously was that it was not going to be possible to replace them at all. Was my understanding, which was not an acceptable one to us. So this sounds a little bit better. It sounds like there is a plan to convert them with a similar design, but that design may take longer to arrive is the issue. And so in the interim, they're being replaced with, if they are down, they're being replaced with more traditional fixture until such a time as the other fixture can arrive. Is that accurate, or is that a misunderstanding?
Yeah. I'll let Eric go first. Actually, there's one specifically on Long Hill that does have a brushed aluminum that because, as Chris pointed out, because it was a car versus pole, because of long lead times, because we can't get it, and now, now there's a lack of illumination from a safety standpoint. As you remember, a couple months back or whatever, we kind of reached not a crisis, but reached a head where we, working through Chris's office, in order to get illumination, we have some temporary poles there, and we're looking for an alternative that is a better fit. I know Eric has some more details.
Yeah.
Yeah.
In terms of.
Go ahead. Sorry. No, you're fine. Go ahead.
Okay. So there are some decorative fixtures that are not available that we cannot replace, and those are the ones around Six Corners, Sumner Ave, that style. We do potentially have replacements for the historical neighborhood downtown and also along downtown Main Street near the casino, where we will be continuing LED versions of those decorative fixtures. But some of the other ones in the other neighborhoods are just not available. We just do not have a replacement for them.
So what is the plan for the neighborhoods where a replacement, it's not an exact replacement doesn't exist, right? An exact LED replacement or even replacement at incandescent or high pressure sodium doesn't exist. They don't make it anymore is the issue?
Yeah, correct. They don't have a replacement in an LED version.
But they do, but you could keep them the way they are. You could replace them with an incandescent or high pressure sodium.
Oh, no. I'm sorry. I misunderstood your question. There are almost no manufacturers making
that particular pole. That's the Maple High, Six Corners, Forest Park, Sumner Avenue.
Correct.
All right. So we need to, what I'd like us to do is, as a city in partnership with Eversource, we need to come up with a plan. We need to come up with a plan for what that conversion is going to look like. Because I think just swapping them out to traditional poles is, really shouldn't be the answer. Whether we need to, make a long-term plan about converting them to the same type of LED that is going to be done downtown Mattoon Street, or something like that. We're probably not going to solve that today. But it does sound like you've identified a solution for Mattoon Street and Main Street. Is that accurate?
Just to make a comment, Councilor, Mattoon Street, those lights are privately owned by the Mattoon Street Association. They are not owned by the city or by Eversource.
Eversource services them, though?
I don't even think Eversource services them because they are privately owned.
Yeah, we maintain the feeds to those lights only.
If I could just jump in here, as a 46-year resident of the neighborhood, those lights were installed in the mid-1970s before there was community development block grant money. And the agreement that was made back then around 1975 was that the electric company would maintain the wiring and the bulb, and the association was responsible for all other kinds of maintenance. A couple years after this, community development block grant started, and the city, when Armory Commons was redeveloped, paid for all the decorative lights out of CDBG money, and then went down to Stockbridge Court and did the same thing. And so Mattoon Street is probably the only area in the city that is responsible for its lights. And certainly the association would like to have a discussion about that coming to an end.
Okay. So it sounds like we need to facilitate that. I'm sure Chairman Curran will be happy to assist, as will I. But on the, thank you, Bob. On the, just to wrap up on the historic lighting piece, it sounds like we'll need a follow-up between the Mattoon Street Association and Eversource. But on the Maple High Six Corners, Forest Park side, I'd like to see us get a clear answer on what the plan's going to be there for that lighting. And I know the McKnight neighborhood, you know, as an equally historic district, is also looking for historic lighting along certain areas, something they've advocated for a long time. So when the conversion in those areas comes up, do we know where those areas fall, Maple High, Forest Park, and McKnight, on the conversion schedule?
I don't have that information at hand, but we can certainly get back to yourself and
Yeah,
specific.
That's where we'd like to have some focus there. All right. Well, I've certainly spoken long enough, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, and I'll turn it back over to you.
I just have a question on the decorative lights for the Eversource folks. Is it possible just to take the existing lights and convert them yourself? Is that at all possible? Do we have that ability to try? I don't know the mechanics of that, but to take one of the existing old-fashioned lights and just basically convert it to LED without ordering a whole new light post. Is that possible at all?
No, that is not possible with just the entire kind of inner workings of that fixture are totally incompatible with an LED.
Yeah, Councilor, it's a common misconception. Like in your house, there are LED bulbs that you can put into the socket. On a street light, just everything else associated with it, it's at least the entire head, if not the whole mast and everything else.
But we couldn't take out the inside mechanicals of it and just replace. No, that's not. So we keep the post. So we keep the aesthetic of the post, but we just take out everything inside and replace it with the LED components. That's not something that can be done.
There aren't any out there in the marketplace. There's no like bulb conversion for these lights.
Gotcha. Okay. Thank you. We also have on the line Councilor Zeta Govan. If I don't know, Councilor Govan, if you have anything to offer here or some questions in regards to the replacement.
No, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm just excited to hear that they're starting in Indian Orchard. I honestly haven't seen any work yet, but maybe I'm not looking in the right place. But I'll look forward to, I guess, seeing the new LED lights, and I'll make sure our neighbors are aware of it as well, and maybe ask them about it. But thank you for starting in Indian Orchard.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair.
We also have on the line Councilor Justin Hurst. I don't know if Councilor Hurst has anything to add to the discussion.
I do not. Thank you.
Thank you,
Chair.
Councilor Hurst. We also have on the line Patrice Dewberry from Wayfinders. Ms. Dewberry, I haven't spoken to you for a long while, but I don't know if you have anything to add or any questions.
Yeah, I actually have put a couple of questions in the chat. The first one, I guess I'm seeking a little clarity on Chris's answer regarding an audit. It sounds like he was saying that an audit wouldn't be done upon completion of the conversion, but if residents request additional lighting or express some kind of concern about lighting and adequacy of lighting in their neighborhood, or if the team who's doing the conversion finds some kind of issue, that's when it will be addressed. So I guess I'm seeking some clarity on the process. If there's no formal audit, like, is it just literally just as things come in, it's going to be addressed going forward? And is that going to be communicated to community residents? So that was my first question. And the second one, and you may have addressed this because I did join a little bit late, if there's a schedule that's been publicly shared on the actual conversion process. I heard Zeta say starting in Indian Orchard, and I didn't know if there's some type of public schedule that's been released.
With regard to the scheduling, the Eversource will be replacing all of the lights over a 5-year period, 14,000 plus lights. So we're doing about 3,000, a little bit under 3,000 per year. And as was mentioned before you had gotten on, Beatrice, is that they started the project this year after January 1st in Indian Orchard, and will be moving towards Pine Point. The rest of the city, the schedule for that has not been set yet.
Okay, thank you for that. And with regard to the process around, residents expressing concern, is there going to be any kind of formal process, or is it similar to what's in place now? Reporting on Eversource site or through city, I think, what is it, 311? Is there going to be any new implementation to engage community at all with regard to this?
We are not doing a full, I guess, engagement plan, for lack of a better term. The Eversource has been replacing lights with LEDs for what, probably a year and a half, Joe, throughout the city.
Yeah, as a car versus pole or a failure, yeah, we have been replacing the heads as opposed to one. We've run out of incandescence and high pressure sodium, so we've been replacing them.
Right, and where I was going with that is, to tell you the truth, the biggest complaint that we get after these are done is that they're too bright. And I know we've had a couple that we've dealt with, Joe, but that's been the major complaint, that these lights are too bright. So that's why we're kind of, as we're moving through the city, making a determination if there are gaps and if a resident makes a request as well. But yeah, through 311, through Eversource, but I know on the conversions that have been done kind of one by one throughout the city, the complaint has mostly been that it's been too bright. And usually I wouldn't say that it's too bright, but it is much, much brighter than what was out there previous.
That's true. We have probably, like, you can count them on one hand, feedback through either 311 or Chris through DPW, and we've gone out and adjusted to a lower lumens, just a handful of those.
Okay, thank you. I know Chris, you're aware that with the Wayfinders Community Advocates Group, we've done some neighborhood walk audits, and lighting always comes up. I know the group of residents we've been working with closely. So, I think one of the concerns that's often expressed is, just communicating that, like, what's the best methodology to communicate their concerns. And I appreciate that Eversource has been responsive by adding, to their website and the city as well. But I didn't know through this process, obviously there's going to be more questions coming up if the city has thought about implementing a way for folks to communicate their concerns at all. So beyond what's there. So thank you for that.
I see Councilor Liederman, you have a question?
No, I'm all set, Mr. Chairman. The question was answered.
Thank you. I just had a question, just came off the discussion. What is the price of these LED light fixtures versus the decorative lamps? If anyone would have that from Eversource, what's the price of a light pole here in the city that you're putting out?
Vanessa looking now. I think it's on the website, but as far as the city is concerned, we will still own these lights. The cost and the rental of the newer light is higher than the older one that is mostly depreciated. However, the electric consumption is less. So net, they are about the same. I know the new tariff came out. I haven't looked. It started in January 1. I haven't looked at it, but that was the projected was overall the cost of the city would be about the same. It might actually, with the cost of the energy portion of your bill, with that going up, I think it might be just slightly higher having the LEDs, but it's not significant.
But to put up each individual pole, like what does that cost? Like when you put up a light pole?
Eric has a budget for it. We're bearing that cost, but
Yeah, I don't have those details of the individual component costs.
the
Understood.
whole undertaking
And,
is a significant project for Eversource to convert all 14,000 streetlights to LEDs in the city.
And just further question on the decorative lights, where is it because they're not being manufactured? Is it supply chain? And where are other municipalities like Boston or Worcester? Where are they getting their decorative lights? Would you know? I don't know.
I can't say that I know where those municipalities, obtain their lights from, but I know our vendors, they're extremely extended lead times, and they always have been for the decorative fixtures, just because they're such a lower volume product that they sell. So it's always been an issue.
But they are still being
It's
manufactured.
always been
What was that, Counselor, again? I'm sorry.
I said they are still being manufactured. They are being made somewhere, are they?
Some of them, some of the varieties that we have, we have similar replacements for, as we talked about before.
Okay. And just one last question. Where is the Springfield Housing Authority on this list? Is it in regards to its housing complexes? Are they on the list for replacement as well?
If they're Eversource owned and maintained, and they are on the city's, bill, so to speak, for a rental, then they are on the list to be converted. But without kind of specific details, I can't really answer that.
Thank you.
Counselor, there are certain ones, the housing authority owns them themselves, like perhaps on their property lights, parking lots, stuff like that. Some are owned by the housing authority themselves.
Well, thank you very much. We have several people on the line. I don't know if anyone else wants to chime in with any questions for the folks from Eversource. This would be the time. I don't see any other questions. I appreciate your time, and I appreciate you being available for the committee. And we appreciate your work you're doing on behalf of the city of Springfield, as this is an issue that's of great importance to residents in all corners of the city. So thank you very much to all the Eversource folks. And the second portion of our hearing, we're going to discuss with DPW Director Chris Signoli, speed bumps. And I know Councilor Liederman had a particular concern with the progress of speed bumps, and I could hand it off to you, Council President Liederman, if you wish to ask some questions.
Sure. Thanks, Mr. Chairman, again for calling this meeting, and thanks. I think Eversource was logged off, but thank you to them for their presentation, and we'll certainly follow up on their progress moving forward. Relative to the speed tables, the council had passed an ordinance last year that was sponsored by Councilor Fenton to allow for the petitioning of the Board of Public Works and the council by residents to install speed tables in their areas upon request and with meeting certain thresholds. Certainly, I've received a number of inquiries from residents looking to understand how to carry out that process. It is a bit of a lengthy one as it currently stands. And I know that Councilor Fenton has begun drafting a guide for residents, for lack of a better term, that would assist them in being able to meet all of the requirements, although that is, even in its draft form, a lengthy document. So wanted to check in with Chris relative to if we've received any requests for speed tables yet, if they've been reviewed. And then once we get through that, I'd like to know, what we're doing to put in place a clearer and more user-friendly process for residents to be able to make this type of request. So let's start with Chris. Have we received any requests for speed tables yet?
I have received two. One was within the last week for Warwick Street that is under review right now. One was received last fall from a resident on DuBois Street in Indian Orchard that was rejected and returned to the resident as they did not recommend a specific location. Basically, they said, we want speed bumps on our street. They got back to me and said, we want them, let DPW pick them. And we said, no, because in the petition, wherever they are located, the person who they are in front of needs to be part of the petition. Then they provided 3 addresses, and our response to them was, you need to pick one of these locations so that it can be reviewed, and have not received a revised petition from them at this point. Those are the only 2. I have received probably 3 or 4 inquiries from neighborhood groups. As an example, probably a month ago, I was at the East Forest Park Civic Association, and they were discussing possibility on Surrey Road, and gave them the information on how to put forth a petition, but have not received any other formal applications.
I think, and I know Councilor Fenton is working on this, which is a development since the request for the meeting. But we really need to put in place a user-friendly mechanism for people to petition. I think, certainly there are some folks who will have the time and expertise to evaluate the ordinance of their own accord and be able to go out and compile the materials. But for most residents, who are working day to day, it's not necessarily going to be as accessible. And so what I'd like to see, Mr. Chairman, is we work with the original sponsor, Councilor Fenton, and with DPW to get sort of a user-friendly, downloadable petition form that can just walk people through step by step how to petition for this, and take as much of the responsibility as possible off of the resident in terms of some of the designing of the petition. Certainly we need folks to go out and get their neighbors' agreement on this, but at the same time, right now, if I just refer somebody to a 4-page ordinance, that's just doesn't cut it. So that's kind of what I wanted to move us towards. In the meantime, Councilor Fenton has begun working on that, so I expect we'll see something in place, but I think we need to expedite it, because certainly this is the time that people are thinking about it as it warms up. This is when people will be able to go out. I think the other thing we should be doing is engaging the neighborhood councils and civic associations, because they could be great resources for residents in assisting them with this type of petitioning. So those are my thoughts. Like I said, there's been some developments since you have scheduled the meeting, but certainly at the end of the day, we need a user-friendly process for people to make these requests.
And if I may, Mr. Chair, this is Councilor Govan.
Absolutely, Councilor Govan. Go ahead.
Thank you. Thank you so much. So I know that Chris is talking about DuBois Street, and I was trying to help Mrs. Footman over there to get the speed humps on her street. And she went out and she got some petitions to slow the traffic down. And this was before the ordinance was done, I think. And when the ordinance was done, she did file the petition and wanted speed humps. And like Chris said, they hadn't identified specific addresses. So at this time, she went out again and got 3 addresses. She thinks 3 speed humps should be on that street. It is a long street. So at this point, I guess I was waiting, and I think Chris and I exchanged emails this morning regarding this. I was waiting back to hear what was the next steps, right? Because you said, okay, well, we need a revised application, but I don't have an application. I think this is speaking to what Council Letterman is talking about, finding a process that is user-friendly for the residents, for the city residents, and it's going to be kind of easier to do, right? Mrs. Footman is retired. She's not working, so she has the time, to go and talk to her neighbors. I think other people in other parts of the city that might live on streets that might warrant a speed table, maybe working, 2 or 3 jobs and may not have the time to be able to invest in this process. So I'm hoping that we're going to find a way to be able to help, the entire city. If this is an ordinance now, then I hope that we will be able to find a way to make it a little bit, more reasonable for people to be able to access it and, to slow traffic down, because that's what the whole reason this ordinance came about. So at this point, and I'm working with Mrs. Footman on Du Bois Street, I actually was going to go out and ask her which one of these 3 addresses she thought would be better placed. And we're thinking at the corner of Du Bois and I think Farnham or Albert Avenue, I'm not sure. That petitioner, the resident that lives there, they already signed the petition, so we'll have to go, I guess, back and ask again. But again, I need to get, I guess, a copy of what the application is, because I don't know what that application is. I know Mrs. Footman had submitted something before, and it was just a petition that she had submitted, I think, that she just made up. So it wasn't even anything official from the city from what I saw, unless she had done that prior to that. So that's what I guess what I'm looking for now is for Du Bois Street specifically, to what document should I use to go out to that petitioner, that resident, and have them sign the petition saying that it's okay to put a speed hump in front of their house? Thank you.
Counselor, what I would say on that is the petition that they put together before is fine as far as the format and what they are asking for. All they need to do is, with that petition, provide us the exact location and address that they want it, and we need to make sure that those abutters are there. Now, the other thing with the abutters that I want to make sure of is that when we put the speed hump in there, there will be no parking associated with that speed bump. So that's where some of these, when we've had a lot of discussions with residents where, hey, I want one in front of my house. I'm like, okay, that's fine. We got to put in some no parking. And it's like, well, no, I need parking in front of my house. So I just want to make sure. That's why I sent over the ordinance as it is, because I want to make sure that the people understand that they're, what they're getting into. I get requests all the time for no parking in front of houses. And then when somebody gets a ticket, they always say, well, I didn't mean me, I meant everybody else. So I want to make sure everybody's very, very aware of what they're getting themselves into.
Of course. And I think that, and that's very well understood.
Yeah.
And I think hopefully with the application that is going to be user-friendly that Council Letterman is referring to, we'll have all that information on there so that when the residents look at it, they can clearly see all those details. Because I know it's in the ordinance, and I'm hoping that Mrs. Footman and all of her neighbors are aware of that as well. But when I go out there to ask her which house, I will make sure that I reiterate that to the resident that lives there.
And she could resubmit that same petition with additional names if additional names are needed.
Okay. And I don't think that additional names are needed, because I think she got everybody's name on that street on that petition. But I think all we're going to need is the person in front of the house where the speed hump will be, that person's, I guess, name to stand out, so to speak, so that that, the permission has been given.
Right. Correct.
Thank you.
Thank you. Just for my own edification there, Chris, if a street, constituents on Sunbriar who are exploring the idea of a speed bump, how many residents have to sign the petition to get that started?
Let me just take a look at this here. They're going to define a particular location will be defined. We at the DPW will make a determination. I just want to make sure I got my verbiage right here. We at the DPW will make a determination as to what we consider to be impacted area of that. And so, for example, if you're putting a speed bump here, we may say that it's 300 feet in each direction and you need to get 2/3 of the property owners within that segment to sign up for it. What we also ask for, and Sunbriar is probably not a great example of this, because probably 99% of the traffic that's on Sunbriar, if it's not local, they're going to Sabas. On certain streets, we ask for abutting streets, because if you put speed bumps on a particular street, I can guarantee if people are using it for a cut through, they're just going to take a different street. So what we don't want to be doing is chasing it. Sunbriar is not really in that case, because if you stay on Mallow Hill, you can't get to any of the other houses there, or you can't get to Sabas. So if somebody wanted one on there, we would pick a length, most likely 300 feet in each direction. They would need 2/3 of the residents within that segment to be signed on for the application, and specifically whose home it would be in front of.
Thank you. If anyone else has any questions regards to...
Mr. Chair?
Certainly, Councilor Allen.
Yeah, thanks. I've been listening in the whole time to this meeting. Good meeting. I just want to add something to Chris's comment on Surrey Road and the request for speed bumps or speed humps there. There certainly are under consideration, but there was a kind of a two-step process to put in hopefully a four-way stop at Wendover and Surrey Road, and that hasn't happened yet. So the thought was to look at that. I think that's under consideration by DPW, the stop sign. Once that goes in, to evaluate the need for speed humps after we see the hopefully positive impact that the four-way stop would provide for safety on the street. So it certainly was talked about. Mr. Signoli was at the meeting. There's a lot of discussion about it, and it hasn't been forgotten. It's just that it's kind of like phase 2 of improving safety on Surrey Road once we get the stop sign.
And just to let you know, Tim, I believe we're putting it on the agenda for next week's traffic commission.
The stop sign?
Yeah, the four-way stop.
Yeah, excellent. Great to hear. All right, thank you. So thank you, Mr. Chair, and thanks, Chris.
Yep.
Well, if there's not any further questions, do I see any further questions in the chat box? I want to thank DPW Director Chris Signoli for joining us this morning and for all the good questions. I thought it was a good, productive meeting. And my fellow councilors, Zeta Govan, Justin Hurst, Jesse Lederman, and Tim Allen for attending. Thanks for the update. I think we learned some stuff, and keep up the good work. And I drove down Liberty Street this morning and I saw that paving has already begun. So
you're welcome.
On that.
You're welcome. You're welcome.
Thank you, Chris.
Thank you. All right. So with that, I think our meeting this morning is concluded. Thank you. Thanks for all the participants. Thank you.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
everybody. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks very much.